Thank you. I have a mic. Thank you. Well, good morning. It's a delight to be here. I have to tell you that I had to stop in the parking lot and text Don once I got here and figured out where I was so that he would have a little less of a challenge finding it too. So I just want to appreciate all of you for making it here this morning, for creating this beautiful space, and for inviting me to be your guest speaker this morning. I'm delighted, really delighted. Tony was talking about how I was a ministerial student and practitioner when he was in his classes, and Reverend Paula was a practitioner about to go to ministerial school when I was starting my classes. And Don and I don't think we were even married yet. We're in Signs of Mind 2 together with Casey Gryba, and Reverend Paula, then just practitioner Paula, was the TA for that class. So we have this wonderful, linkage and history. So we're all kind of part of what I call the Huntington Beach Church diaspora. We have made a wider spread, and we've all moved out into the community in different kinds of ways, but we always have this deep love for our roots and our connection that we had there, because it was the launching pad for many of us, and so I'm always very appreciative of that, and I just wanted to start out with that. Tony, you just gave a wonderful talk. Thank you. And you touched on some things that I'm not touching on. I thought, I should have thought of that. I should have thought of that. But I'm so glad you did, because now we've we'll fill in the gaps. And like Tony, I think there's a great deal of good in getting away. There always is, and then coming back. Don and I like to have adventures. Well, I guess, and I like to have adventures, because I'm going to tell you 3 little short stories about some adventures that helped me understand what it is to really let go and move into that space of this receptiveness of spirit. The first one happened about 35 years ago, before Don Price, before Science of Mind, back when I had a little bit different attitude about life altogether, when I was in Cancun, Mexico, and I decided that I was going to try parasailing for the first time. Well, I got down to the beach and signed up for the parasailing, and they set me down, or they pull up this little kind of this leather triangle thing that had ropes connected to it. That was the seat I was going to sit in to fly in this thing. I'm sure there was probably something else to wrap around my waist, but that's all I really remember is this triangular seat and the ropes. And so as I'm taking off, I take this death grip on the ropes, so that I'm sure I must have left permanent marks from my fingernails in my hands, because I was holding myself up because I was afraid the seat wouldn't hold me. Now, I don't have a lot of upper body strength, so you can imagine that first ride was really more about the terror of being that far above the ocean, not knowing what was going to happen if I let go. I was afraid to let go and let the seat hold me. And so I had this experience of flying over the water in Cancun and coming back down again. Okay, fast forward about 20 years. This time I'm in Puerto Vallarta with Don. We're at a minister's convocation, and I decide, okay, I'm going to do it again. And so I get down to the beach, and we both took off we both went parasailing, but I signed up, and they come along and get you into the harness, and the seat is made out of the same thing as seat belts, and it wraps around your waist, and there's straps over your chest, and like you're really in the thing. And so that felt good to me. And then we took off and flew out over the ocean, and you could see all of Puerto Vallarta and that beautiful church and all the houses on the hill. And then I look out at the ocean, and I see dolphins and whale. I saw a whale under the water. I could see the whole thing. And then the boat went north and took us up toward Puerto Vallarta Norte, and there was a ship in the harbor, and the ship's name was Elation. And of course, that was exactly the feeling I was having when I was up here this time flying. And I had realized that my attitude had changed my altitude in terms of how I was viewing this experience of going parasailing again. So that was wonderful. Well, wind picked up, and I'm not really a very heavy person. Sometimes I think I could lose a few pounds, but the wind picked up so much that it was holding me up in the air, and I couldn't get down. And so, and I thought, well, that's kind of, as I thought about it later, an interesting thing. So finally, I had enough strength to pull on that rope so that I could get back to earth again. But it was a wonderful experience. Okay, about 10 years ago, Don and I were in our favorite place, Hawaii. Also, I could picture Hanalei Bay and exactly where you were, and it's so beautiful. But we were on the Big Island, which is my favorite place. I used to live on the Big Island, so it's kind of always been home to me. And we decided that we were going to go zip lining. And so we went up into the mountains above Hawaii, which is up on the very north tip of Kohala on the Big Island. And we rode up in this old World War II all-terrain vehicle, chugging up the hill through these rutted roads and going way up into the rainforest. We get up into this gorgeous rainforest, and they teach us all about the equipment and the safety, of course. And then, you all got your own little harness that you took care of. It was yours. And you'd hook on to the line. And the first zip line, there were 8 of them. The first one was about 300 feet, and maybe you were 10, 20 feet above the ground. It wasn't very far. It was kind of a trainer, zip line. But then they progressively got longer and higher until the last one was 1,100 feet over a deep gorge with a waterfall and a stream running down this way. And then you looked out over the ocean, you could see Maui. It was just beautiful. Well, by that time, we were having so much fun that, it wasn't screams of terror, they were screams of joy, doing these wild rides across. And some of these young kids, they'd flip upside down, they'd do all this cool stuff. Well, I didn't do any of that, but it was just so much fun. And what I've got out of those kinds of experiences is that there's a really important aspect to the way we live our lives, and that is that life is a daring adventure. Remember, there's that saying about if life is a daring adventure. It is a daring adventure. And that in order for us to experience those daring adventures, we have to be somewhat prepared. There is some practicality to having a lifeline, a safety net, or something to hold you. And that's your spiritual practice, your spiritual preparation. But life in that daring adventure also requires you to be willing to let go, to be willing to take that leap, to be willing to take that step, to be willing to come up off the ground. And so that's where the idea of the sea of receptivity comes into this talk today, and why it is so important for us to think about where are we in terms of our receptiveness to this life that we're living. Wherever we might be on that life continuum, there is still more to be lived, or we wouldn't be here, right? There's more to be lived. There's more to experience. And so the question then becomes, how are we going to experience that? So these human adventures give us a sense of something that we are yearning for within ourselves. We do these outward adventures because there's something inside of us that is wanting to adventure out. Be more, have more, do more, whatever it might be. We have this longing to kind of break free of our own senses of limitation, of what's holding us back from a really full experience of life. And every time we take another growth spurt, every time we do that, it requires that we have to step out on the edge a little bit more, just as Dawn and I did with the zip lines, to get to the other side, to get to our greater yet to be. Henry Miller said, all growth is a leap in the dark, a spontaneous, unpremeditated act without the benefit of experience. Every time we want to experience something new, every time we want to move ourselves beyond where we are into something greater, we are doing an an unpremeditated act without the benefit of experience. We're walking into uncharted waters. Sometimes we have to walk into uncharted waters when we take on a new career. Sometimes we walk into uncharted waters when we're dealing with some kind of physical health experience. Sometimes we walk into uncharted waters when we find ourselves falling in love. There are all kinds of times when we are having that experience. So our leaps of faith, as I say, it might be a time when we're changing a career in midlife, or starting a new relationship, or moving to a new place. It also might be sharing something difficult with someone. That takes a leap of faith too, doesn't it? Or standing up for your values even when they're not popular. And it may be something bigger. It may be something like choosing an alternative treatment to heal a condition, or asking for a raise. Any of those things require that willingness to leap out there, to surrender, to open ourselves to that something more. Last night I was watching the SAG Awards, and Don is a member of SAG. I don't know how many of you remember that Don, for a period of time, was working as a movie extra after he retired. And so he's kept his SAG card alive ever since then. And so every year, SAG sends us CDs of all the movies that are up for awards, so we get to watch all these. A lot of them this year were really major downers, I've got to say. They weren't our typical favorite kinds of movies. But that right before the show started, they did like little mini interviews of people, actors in the audience, about why they're an actor. And Queen Latifah said, you hear things like, you need to be more this, you're not enough of that, you're not enough, you're not enough. She said, but I am enough, I'm an actress. And then she received an award for the show that she was in. And when she got up, she said, my mom and dad always told me that I could do anything I wanted. And she said, and I believed them, and here I am. And I thought, that's the sea of receptivity at work. That's the idea that was planted, a seed that was planted in her mind years and years and years ago, that manifested this amazing woman called Queen Latifah, who has played some of the most fabulous parts out there. What if her parents had said, you'll never make it in anything you try? And some of us have had parents who told us things like that. It might have been a different story for her. But that sea of receptivity, she was receptive, she was open, she heard it, and look what happened, and look who she is today. So it's really powerful to take that leap. And if we don't take the leap, we can't get to the other side. If we don't take a chance in life, we're not going to get anywhere. One of my favorite quotes about relationships, in fact, it's one that I have framed in a little picture. It says, love and risk are inseparable. Love and risk are inseparable. You might get a broken heart. You might be hurt. But on the other hand, you might not. You might find an incredible relationship that you have for the rest of your life. I could also translate that into life and risk are inseparable, because there's certainly risk every day that we are alive. But we've got to be willing to risk. We've got to be willing to be that. Emily Dickinson wrote, we never know how high we are until we're called to rise. And then, if we are true to form, our statures touch the sky. Our statures touch the sky. When we really call ourselves to be all that we can be, when we really call ourselves to be the highest and best that is possible for us, when we respond to that call, we are again letting ourselves, free of all moorings, fall into that sea of receptivity that says, I can be whatever it is I choose to be in my life. I can be. And it has nothing to do with age, because I know I'm still seeing things that I want to reach to. Our ability to rise and be more are set our sights on our highest possible vision, on the chance, as your poem said, that perhaps we might not make it. What's that old saying about shoot for the stars, you might hit a tall tree? That's good. That's good. But we won't make it at all if we don't try. Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of all the shots you never take. Good advice. Kind of a Yogi Berra statement, isn't it? You miss 100% of all the shots you never take. So I don't know what's going on in your life right now. And maybe everything is lined up just the way you want. But maybe there's some part of you that's dealing with some divine discontent. I find that whenever I get into that place of divine discontent, I'm supposed to be looking at what's next. I'm supposed to be looking at, okay, there's something else, there's something more. Not that I'm not happy with the life I'm living, because I'm really happy with the life I'm living. I'm very grateful. These principles have taught me so much about how to live a full and complete life. But there's still always something else to reach for, something to stretch for. I admire my dear husband, who's very musical. As many of you know, he plays the ukulele. But every morning he's up at 6 o'clock and down at his keyboard practicing the piano. And I bet you're just really loving what Richard was doing this morning, because you're awesome, by the way. You are really awesome. Why is he doing that? Because he wants to be a better pianist. And the only way he's going to get there is by practicing. But he's also in that sea of receptivity, because it's saying, I can do this. I can do this. And it takes practice. Huh? Yeah, you are. But maybe you have some dreams and desires. But maybe there's something holding you back. Maybe you're waiting to see what's happening next in the economy, or in the elections, or in life itself. Things are always going to be different, and conditions for the next leap may not be always perfect. You know, sometimes we wait for everything to just be perfect, and then it's never perfect, so then we don't try because it's never perfect. Well, it may not ever be perfect, but that shouldn't stop us from wanting to go forward with the things that we want to do. So when you're looking for something in your life that you want to change or want to reach for, waiting until everything is perfect may be the surest guarantee that you will never do it. So safety equipment is a good idea. If you're planning to do anything really wild like helicopter skiing, it might be good to do that. But on the other hand, waiting until conditions are perfect to move forward in life are not going to get you very far. So Ernest Holmes said, as Tony quoted earlier, the person who can throw himself with complete abandon into the sea of receptivity, having cut loose from all apparent moorings, is the one who will receive the greatest reward. I think that's one of my favorite sayings from Ernest Holmes. I have always loved that, because it's given me permission to take a chance. It's given me permission to take a risk. It's given me permission to step out a little bit more, maybe sometimes just a teeny bit, other times in a big way. Because when I know that I am receptive to the divine good, I know that the universe is saying yes to me. I know that what I'm really doing is letting myself cut myself loose so that I might be in the sea of infinite unconditional love, which is what God is. And infinite unconditional love only says yes, right? Infinite unconditional love doesn't judge what it is you're saying. So if you're giving negative thoughts and negative ideas out to that same infinite sea, it's going to respond with yes. And at the same time, when you say that and you give it out, it can say yes to all of the dreams and ideals and desires that you have. It's the infinite universe. It's always saying yes, and it's tilted in our favor. So throwing ourselves out with complete abandon is trusting it fully. I do a lot of counseling. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard the two words put together, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but, arguing for whatever the limitation is. And I say, get off the butts and get out there and do it. Because if you just stick with the yes, but, you're arguing for your limitations. And I want you to know that I yes, but myself all the time. So I'm not saying that I do this perfectly either. I'm still in the learning process on this, and I'm going to share a little bit more with you about that in a second. Emerson said, do not be too timid and squeamish about your actions. All life is an experiment. So sometimes we experiment and we might make some mistakes, right? We may not get it all right the first time. We might fall down. We might not succeed. But that doesn't mean we don't get up again and try it again. Learn something new. Take another leap. Somebody on the SAG Awards last night said, I tried out for this audition And they told me, okay, that was pretty good. Now, lower the energy by about 90% and do it again. She said, I didn't get the part. She said, but I'm an actor. So sometimes we don't get everything we want the first time we try, but we try again. We do it again. If you don't have a good relationship, if there's a breakup in your life, if there's a job that's lost, if you feel like you didn't succeed at something, there's a tendency sometimes to talk to yourself and tell yourself what a failure you are, and an unwillingness to do it again, to give it another try. But oftentimes, everything that you experienced in whatever that situation was, that broken relationship, that job that didn't go so well, was a teaching opportunity. It was telling you something you needed to know. So the question becomes, what did I learn from that? And how can I apply that the next time? The actress learned a lot from not getting that part, I'm sure. But she obviously got the part. She was at the SAG Awards sitting at a table. She had to be somebody, right? So if all life is an experiment and not a dress rehearsal, then what keeps us from accomplishing our dreams? What keeps us from not experiencing all the things that we should be experiencing in this life? This is the only life I know I'm going to have. I don't really know whether we have past lives or if our DNA just remembers stuff. I'm not sure, but I know that in this form, in this physical body, this is my only go around. And there's nothing I want to leave out. I want to experience it. I want to experience it as much as I can. Well, if I'm afraid of failure, which is really the best way to learn and grow, then I'm not going to get to do those things. I'm not going to get to experience them. If I withhold permission from myself out of some old, outworn sense of duty to things that don't even work in my life anymore, then is that good for me? Is that going to allow me to move forward? If we hold on to limiting beliefs and not take the next step, Emerson speaks of those who live lives of quiet desperation. I know we all know people like that. Most of them don't know anything about science of mind because you can't live a life of quiet desperation if you follow this teaching. Quiet desperation, what a way to spend your time on the planet when there is so much to experience. I know I don't want to live like that. I'm sure you don't either. So I believe beyond any doubt that Spirit wants us to live our life as fully and as completely as we possibly can while we're here. To give ourselves the qualities of joy and abundance and love and peace and beauty and wholeness, and then share that good with the world. It isn't about keeping it all to ourselves. It's about sharing it with the world, because once we open up to share it with the world, we experience even more of the same, right? When we give it away. Ernest Holmes goes on when he's talking about the seed of receptivity, he goes on and says, our belief sets the limit to our demonstration of a principle which of itself is without limit. It is ready to fill everything because it is infinite. So it is not a question of its willingness nor of its ability. It is entirely a question of our own receptivity. It's all about how are we taking in all that's around us. What are we tuning into? What are we allowing into our consciousness? What are we feeding ourselves with mentally? We can get into all the arguments for why we can't do something, right? We can get into all of that, but we can also change the channel. We can become receptive to all that will support us. We can be receptive to our own inner parent telling us we are enough and that we can do anything we set our mind to. And we can close off the other stuff. I'm going to make a confession here. I've been talking about writing a book for about the last 10 years. You've probably heard it if you know me at all. Have I done it yet? Nope. I went to another writing workshop last weekend. And the leader, who I love, this is the third writing workshop I've gone to that she's put on, asked us a very challenging question, and it's one that really got me going. We were at a beautiful old Episcopal church up in San Gabriel. This church was built in the late 1800s. It's called Church of Our Savior, and it's gorgeous. If you ever get up there, just walk the grounds. It has a family cemetery on it with the old family plots, with a big monument in the middle, and then all the little gravestones of all the family members around it. And the grounds are beautiful, big trees, and it's a gorgeous old church. She asked us this question: what will keep you alive this year? What will keep you alive this year? And then she said to us, I want you to go on a silent walking meditation in the cemetery. Oh, man. So we did. We're all out there walking around in the cemetery. Now, does that get you in touch with your mortality? Ooh, okay. I know my clock is ticking. I'm sure many of us in this room know our clock is ticking. Now, I also just a year ago lost my dad at the age of 100. So on the outside end, I've got about 27 years I can pretty well figure I've got, as long as I behave myself and don't drive crazy. And on the other hand, maybe not, but at least I think I might have that much time. I like to think that. That means if I've only got 27 years to go, I might be able to get that book written, right? But I tend to be really last minute about a lot of things, and I don't think that I'm going to get that kind of chance when it comes to how long this life is going to be. So while I was out there in that cemetery having this conversation with myself about this very question, I began to hear this old tape running in my head. You can't go outside and play until you finish your homework. You can't go outside and play until your room is clean. You can't go outside and play until you've done your chores. You can't go outside and play. Well, I kind of see the book as play, not as work. I kind of see painting, which I love to do, as play, not as work. And I always seem to find a lot of work to do. Don is really good at play. He's the best balance I could possibly ask for in my life. But I started thinking about that. And I thought, what will keep me alive this year? What will call me? What will push me? Why can't I get that book written? And I know what it's about. I know what the book is about. What's the holdup? And then I heard all those echoes. I thought, what have I been receptive to? I had a realization. I wanted to get my office organized and redone before I started my book. I decided that I had to change the tape in my head, because if any of you ever came to my office at Huntington Beach or at Seal Beach, you would know that my office is usually a stockpile of papers and books stacked everywhere. It does not belong in House and Garden magazine. It is not the office of the year. And my office at home is equally as bad, with a little bit of more of my collection. My collection, I collect dust. So there is a lot of work to do in that office. It could take me years. I was at my daughter's house the other day, and we walked into my granddaughter's room, she's 17, and my daughter said, Mom, look at this room. And I walked in, and there are clothes piled all over the floor. It's a mess. It's a disaster. And I turned to my daughter and said, it's a genius at work. And she said, what do you mean? She said, she never cleans it up. I said, it's a genius at work. She said, it would take me 20 minutes to do this. Ashley walks in here and says, and I think to myself and say to her, I have the same feeling when I walk in my office. I don't know where to start. So I decided to change that tape. Who cares if my office is a wreck? Is somebody going to come in and take a picture of my office while I'm writing a book? I don't think so. And if they do, they'll just say, oh, she's really got what it is to be receptive. I can't do that. True. You've been receptive to yet. Yearning to give. You're going to be another. Right? Our spirit.